The Evenks are a Tungusic people of northern Asia. In Russia, the Evenks are recognized as one of the indigenous peoples of the Russian North, with a population of 35,527. According to the 2010 census, there were 37,843 Evenks in Russia. In China, the Evenki form one of the 56 ethnic groups officially recognized by the People's Republic of China, with a population of 30,875, as per the 2010 census. There are also 535 Mongolized Evenki in Mongolia, referred to as Kamnigan. Origin. The Evenks or Evenki are sometimes conjectured to be connected to the Shiwei people who inhabited the Greater Khingan Range in the 5th to 9th centuries. Although the native land of the majority of Evenki people is in the vast regions of Siberia between Lake Baikal and the Amur River, the Evenki language forms the northern branch of the Manchu-Tungusic language group and is closely related to even the Negaidal in Siberia. By 1600, the Evenks, or Evenki of the Lena and Yenisei valleys, were successful reindeer herders. By contrast, the Solons and the Kamnigans had picked up horse breeding and the Mongolian deal from the Mongols. The Solons nomadized along the Amur River. They were closely related to the Dor people. To the west, the Kamnigan were another group of horse-breeding Evenks in the Transbaikalia area. Also in the Amur Valley, a body of Siberian Evenki-speaking people were called Orochen by the Manchus. Historical distribution. The Evenks have most likely been in the Baikal region of southern Siberia since the Neolithic era. The origin of the Evenks is the result of complex processes, different in time, involving the mixing of different ancient aboriginal tribes from the north of Siberia with tribes related in language to the Turks and Mongols. The language of these tribes took precedence over the languages of the aboriginal population. Elements of more modern Evenk culture, including conical tent dwellings, bonefish lures, and birch bark boats, were all present in sites that are believed to be Neolithic. From Lake Baikal, they spread to the Amur and Okhotsk Sea, the Lena Basin, and the Yenisei Basin. Contact with Russians. In the 17th century, the Russian Empire began to expand enough to contact the remote Evenkis, Cossacks, men who served as a kind of bodyguard for the Tsarist government, imposed a fur tax on the Siberian tribes. The Cossacks exploited the Evenki clan hierarchy and took hostages from the highest members in order to ensure payment of the tax. Although there was some rebellion against local officials, the Evenks generally recognized the great need of peaceful cultural relations with the Russians. Contact with the Russians and constant demand for fur taxes pushed the Evenkis east all the way to Sakhalin Island, where some still live today. In the 19th, some groups migrated south and east into Mongolia and Manchuria. Today there are still Evenki populations in Sakhalin, Mongolia and Manchuria, and to a lesser extent, the traditional Baikal region. Traditional life. Traditionally they were a mixture of pastoralists and hunter-gatherers. They relied on the domesticated reindeer for milk and transport and hunted other large game for meat. Today, the Evenks are divided into two large groups, engaging in different types of economy. These are the hunting and reindeer breeding Evenks, and the horse and cattle pastoral Evenks, as well as some farming Evenks. The Evenks lived mostly in areas of what is called the taiga, or boreal forest. They lived in conical tents made from birch bark, a reindeer skin tied to birch poles. When they moved camp, the Evenks would leave the dwelling's framework and carry only the more portable coverings. During winter, the hunting season, most camps consisted of 1 or 2 tents, while the spring encampments encompassed up to 10 households. The skill of riding the domesticated reindeer allowed the Evenkis to colonize vast areas of the eastern taiga which had previously been impenetrable. The Evenks use a saddle unique to the culture, which is placed on the shoulders of the reindeer, which lessens the strain on the animal. Also, the Evenks traditionally did not use stirrups but used a stick to balance. Evenks did not develop reindeer sledges until comparatively recent times. They instead used the reindeer as pack animals and often traversed great distances on foot, using snowshoes or skis. The Evenki people did not eat the domesticated reindeer, but kept them for milk. Large herds of reindeer were very uncommon. Most Evenks had around 25 head of reindeer, because they were generally bred for transportation purposes. Unlike several other neighboring tribes, Evenk reindeer breeding did not include herding of reindeer by dogs nor any other specific features. Very early in the spring season, the winter camps broke up and moved to places suitable for calving. Several households pastured their animals together throughout the summer, being careful to keep crucial areas fenced off, to guard the newborn calves against being trampled on in a large herd. Clothing. The Evenks wore a characteristic costume, adapted to the cold but rather dry climate of central Siberia and to a life of mobility. They wore brief garments of soft reindeer or elk skin around the hips, along with leggings and moccasins, or else long supple boots reaching to the thigh. They also wore a deerskin coat that did not close in front but was instead covered with an apron-like cloth. Some Evenkis decorated the clothing with fringes or embroidery. The Evenki traditional costume always consisted of these elements: the loincloth made of animal hide, leggings, and boots of varying lengths. Facial tattooing was also very common. Hunting. The traditional Evenki economy was a mix of pastoralism, fishing, and hunting. The Evenki who lived near the Okosk hunted seal, but for most of the taiga dwellers, elk, wild reindeer, and fowl were the most important game animals. Other animals included roe deer, bear, wolverine, lynx, wolf, Siberian marmot, fox, and sable. Trapping did not become important until the imposition of the fur tax by the Tsarist government. Before acquiring guns in the 18th century, Evenks used steel bows and arrows, along with the main hunting implements. Hunters always carried a pike, which was a large knife on a long handle used instead of an axe when passing through the thick taiga, or as a spear. When hunting bear, the Evenks have deep respect for animals and all elements of nature. It is forbidden to torment an animal, bird, or insect, and a wounded animal must be finished off immediately. It is forbidden to spill the blood of a killed animal or defile it. It is forbidden to kill animals or birds that were saved from pursuit by predators or came to a person for help in a natural disaster. Evenks of Russia. The Evenks were formerly known as Tungus. This designation was spread by the Russians, who acquired it from the Yakuts and the Siberian Tatars in the 17th century. The Evenks have several self-designations, of which the best known is Evenk. This became the official designation for the people in 1931. Some groups call themselves Orochen, Orochon, Isle, etc. At one time or another, tribal designations and place names have also been used as self-designations, for instance Manjagir, Bairation, Solon, etc. Several of these have even been taken for separate ethnic entities. There is also a similarly named Siberian group called the Evens. Although related to the Evenks, the Evens are now considered to be a separate ethnic group. The Evenks are spread over a huge territory of the Siberian taiga, from the River Ob in the west to the Okhotsk Sea in the east, and from the Arctic Ocean in the north to Manchuria and Sakhalin in the south. The total area of the habitat is about 2,500,000 square kilometers. In all of Russia, only the Russians inhabit a larger territory. According to the administrative structure, the Evenks live from west to east in Tyumen and Tomsk oblasts, Krasnoyarsk Krai with Evenk Autonomous Okrug, Irkutsk, Chita and Amur oblasts, the Buryat and the Sakha republics, Khabarovsk Krai, and Sakhalin Oblast. However, the territory where they are a titular nation is confined solely to Evenk Autonomous Okrug, where 3,802 of the 35,527 Evenks live. More than 18,200 Evenks live in the Sakha Republic. The Evenki language is the largest of the northern group of the Manchu-Tungus languages, a group which also includes the Even and Negaidal languages. Russian Federation. According to the 2002 census, 35,527 Evenki lived in Russia. Evenks of China. According to the 2000 census, there are 30,505 Evenks in China, mainly made up of the Solons and the Khamnigans. 88.8% of China's Evenks live in the Hulunbuir region in the north of the Inner Mongolia province, near the city of Halar. The Evenk Autonomous banner is also located near Hulunbuir. There are also around 3,000 Evenks in neighboring Heilongjiang province. The Manchu Emperor Hongtaiji conquered the Evenks in 1640, and executed the leader Bombogor. After the Manchu conquest, the Evenks were incorporated into the Eight Banners. In 1763, the Qing government moved 500 Solon Evenk and 500 Daur families to the Takang and Gulya areas of Xinjiang, in order to strengthen the empire's western border. 1020 Xibe families followed the next year. Since then, however, the Solons of Xinjiang have assimilated into other ethnic groups, and are not identified as such anymore. By county level distribution of the Evenks of Ukraine. According to the 2001 census, there were 48 Evenks living in Ukraine. The majority stated that the native language was Russian, 4 indicated Evenk as the native language, and 3 that it was Ukrainian. Religion. Prior to contact with the Russians, the belief system of the Evenks was animistic. Many have adopted Tibetan Buddhism. The Evenki, like most nomadic, pastoral, and subsistence agrarian peoples, spend most of their lives in very close contact with nature. Because of this, they develop what A.S. Irena calls an ecological ethic. By this she means a system of responsibility of people to nature and her spirit masters, and of nature to people. Irena interviewed many Evenks who until very recently spent much of the time as reindeer herders in the taiga, just like their ancestors. The Evenki people also spoke along the same lines, the respect for nature and the belief that nature is a living being. This idea, embodiment, animation, and personification of nature, what is still called the animistic worldview, is the key component of the traditional worldview of hunter-gatherers. Although most of the Evenkis have been sedentarized, that is, made to live in settled communities instead of following the traditional nomadic way of life, any scholars think that the worldview, characteristic of hunter-gatherer societies, is preserved, even if they make the transition to new economic models. Although nominally Christianized in the 18th century, the Evenki people maintain many of the historical beliefs, especially shamanism. The Christian traditions were confined to the formal performance of orthodox rites, which were usually timed for the arrival of the priest in the taiga. The religious beliefs and practices of the Evenks are of great historical interest, since these retain some archaic forms of belief. Among the most ancient ideas are spiritualization and personification of all natural phenomena, belief in an upper, middle, and lower world, belief in the soul, and certain totemistic concepts. There were also various magical rituals associated with hunting and guarding herds. Later on, these rituals were conducted by shamans. Shamanism brought about the development of the views of spirit masters. There are few sources on the shamanism of the Evenki peoples below the Ama-Helongkang River in northern China. There is a brief report of fieldwork conducted by Richard Nolan Kunshi in 1994 of the life of the shamaness Dula, also known as Ao Yun Hua. She was born in 1920 and was living in the village of Yimingatse in the Evenki banner of the Hulunbuir Prefecture, in the Inner Mongolian Autonomous Region. While not a particularly good informant, she described her initiatory illness, her multi-year apprenticeship with a Mongol shaman before being allowed to heal at the age of 25 or 26, and the torments she experienced during the Cultural Revolution in the 1960s when most of her shamanic paraphernalia was destroyed. Mongol and Buddhist Lamist influences on her indigenous practice of shamanism were evident. She had her prized possession, an Abigaldi shaman mask, which has also been documented among the Mongols and Dao peoples in the region. The field report and color photographs of this shaman are available online. Olga Kudrina was a shamaness among the reindeer Evenki of northern Inner Mongolia along the Ama River's Great Bend.